Hey everybody, welcome to the Stop Posting, Start Marketing podcast. This is Joe Sanders here with you again. Thanks for listening. Today, if you've been following along, today we are focusing on step 3. So as you know, the Stop Posting, Start Marketing philosophy is a 5-step process. You can go back and listen to our other episodes, or you can check out our book or our website. However, let's run through them really quick. So the first episode we talked about finding the right audience and how important it is to know who you're marketing to. Second step is to produce the right content, right? You got to know what kind of content you're making, but you got to know who your audience is first so that you can make the right content for the right people. Today, we're going to focus on step 3, which is promote your business as a brand. And doing so, I have the pleasure of having Jillian Kernats with us today. Jillian is on my team. She is the marketing genius working here at Relevant Elephant. She handles a ton of our accounts. She does a fabulous job. We have been so lucky to have Jillian on our team. And so she's going to join us today. Welcome, Jillian. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Great. So a little story about Jillian. So I met Jillian, I don't think it's been it's been over 2 years, right? 2.5 years?
Yeah, like February 2018, I think is when I started.
All right. So Jillian's been here for over 2.5 years, which she should get a medal or some kind of recognition just for doing that. Seriously, because things over here are a little crazy sometimes. However, but I remember when I interviewed you on the phone and I was so impressed with you. And then you showed up and you showed me your portfolio was maybe 10 minutes. And I just stopped you and I was like, do you want to work here? And you're like, okay. And I'm like, let's start now, today. And so we did. We went and had lunch and then we came back and then we just started working that same day. And I was so amazed that you had told me you had interviewed for other jobs and nobody had hired you. So if there's anybody out there and recognizes Jillian and she was in your office and you didn't hire her, dude, you missed out big time. I'm just telling you. So again, it's wonderful to have Jillian. So let's talk about this branding idea when it comes to marketing. Okay. So the way I always like to lay this out is more in a simple way, because branding is something that a lot of companies get really worked up about. It can get really complicated. Sometimes it is necessary to make a really, really big deal about determining what your brand's all about. If you're a big company, Fortune 500 company, or if you're launching a new something and blah, 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 yeah, your brand standards are really important. But I want to make a distinction to what we're talking about today. We're talking about how you want your brand to be perceived. We're not talking about your colors or your font, your logos, things like that. Those are really important. Those are more like brand standards. What we're talking about today is more like brand functionality. And the way we can break this down really easily is what I like to say is, what are the 3 things you want people to think about when they think about your business? And we can do this for any business can go through this. We can give this from small businesses to large businesses can go through that exercise. But I think it's really, really important to understand what that is. So Jillian, I'm going to throw this out to you because you work on this every day. You're making content every day for all kinds of different clients. I mean, why is this branding element so important when you're making content for companies' digital marketing channels?
Yeah, so I think that obviously we work a lot with small local businesses. And I think a lot of people, when they think of a brand in general, they kind of think of logos, colors, merchandise, all that sort of stuff. But a lot of the businesses we work with are kind of more of a service instead of a product, like restaurants, music venues, trades. So all those things are important. I think branding comes across most effectively on social media. And it's important because your branding kind of does a couple important things, which is it creates your identity. It makes you distinct from, your competitors in the market. And it allows you to consistently relay a consistent message, especially on social, which is what we focus on the majority of the time for our specific clients.
Yeah, that's really well said. And, for a lot of times when you're doing the kind of content, in today's world of marketing, you're producing content all the time. It's constant, right? We joke in the office sometimes and we're like, hey, I wonder what marketing people used to do 30 years ago. Like, what did they do all day? Like, were they making like a magazine ad that took like a month to develop and they were going back and forth?
Right.
We're making stuff like all the time, but the value of it is still the same, right? If you put a billboard out, if you live in Chicago like we do, there's these really delicious looking billboards by Giordano's. You've probably seen these. If not, look up Giordano's, Chicago deep dish pizza. But they have these really beautiful pictures of deep dish pizza up on the highway, like everywhere you go. And it just says like, eat this or deep dish or something. And that's all it does. And then the logo of Giordano's. Now, if you're looking at that and you're thinking to yourself, like as a marketing person, there's really no ROI on that. There's really not like a way for me to have like a call to action on a billboard, but the branding element is so important because I'm looking at that and I'm understanding what these people are all about. What are they all about? They're about deep dish pizza, man. They're about high quality, right? That's what they're about. And so we're doing this, and not just us, but when you're marketing on your social media channels, and you're doing this every day, you're doing the exact same thing. You're just doing it multiple times a day or multiple times a week with all kinds of different content. It's the branding elements that are so important. If you think about it the other way, if you put a picture up on the highway of something of deep dish pizza that didn't look very good, right? And you were showing that to people all the time, then people would be negatively affected by your brand, right? But those branding elements are so important. So what I always like to tell people is do that exercise. What are the 3 things you want people to think about when they think about your business? And then go back and look at your social media channels, look at your website, and figure out if what you're seeing is in line with what you actually want people to perceive, or have somebody else look at it for you and say, what are the 3 things you take away from looking at this stuff, and see what they say. Because some things that exist in our mind and that we intend to do sometimes don't come across the way that we intended. So my next question would be along these same lines of, so we're talking a lot about branding, but I guess I should ask Jillian straight up. I would use the word, should you ever make content for a social media page or digital marketing campaign or any campaign without understanding what the business's brand is all about? I mean, what would you say if somebody was like, well, my branding, you can make all these posts anyway. The branding's not important. I don't need to know that. I mean, what would be your response?
Well, I guess the short answer is no. I don't think that's smart. And I think what we always talk about and with our clients is you should stop posting, start marketing. I think if it's something very topical or something you do every now and then, that can be okay. But I think the smarter thing to do would be find a way to tie that into your brand. So for example, say one of my pizza clients, we had to kind of switch up our messaging regarding the whole COVID pandemic that's happening right now. So instead of just posting general things or articles about COVID, I just posted a funny thing about pizza shouldn't be 6 feet away. It should be 6 feet deep.
Right.
So something like that can bring in the topical what's going on, but still connecting it to your brand is the smartest thing to do rather than just posting something.
That's such a great example, because us, like all businesses, but also companies that work with multiple businesses and marketing like us, we've all had to shift. And I found that during the COVID time, and I think you would agree with me, the companies that really had strong branding elements and had really connected and invested connecting with their clients during that time really saw a lot of benefit, because during this time of COVID, when they maybe were a restaurant that didn't do a lot of takeout business, now they really needed those customers, and they would go out with those messages. And because they had connected so well, and because those customers really cared about them, that they really did respond. Which, and, you bring up a really good point though, because I have seen this before, and now we've of course never done this, but you brought up the idea of shifting the messaging to something that you came up with a piece of content that would communicate a message as well as promote a brand, but it was on point. I have seen businesses post things that are popular on the internet. Like if there's a meme that's really popular, or there's a picture, or there's is it GIF or GIF? It depends. I don't know how to say it. Which one is it? GIF.
I don't know if it's right.
I say that around people sometimes and they get mad at me, but I'm going to say GIF. There's a GIF that's really important, or that's really popular, and they post it on their page and they get a ton of response out of it, but it has nothing to do with their business. And so, I mean, what would you say as a professional marketer, if somebody came to you and said, well, we should post something about this, or we supposed because this is really popular, this is really important. I want to do this, I want to do that. I mean, isn't it always good to just get engagement regardless of where it comes from?
Not necessarily. I think that you got to think about too, not all of your followers see every one of your posts. And if you're posting about something that is incredibly popular, other places that are more relevant posting about that, people are going to be seeing that too. So I think it's going to just kind of get lost in the feed. So I think it does come back to that idea of if you can take that and tie it back to your brand somehow, that would be most effective, and your followers would see that and it would be more distinct than what they're just seeing the same thing popping up all over their feed from that day or what's popular that week.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that we've had those conversations with clients before and they're like, oh, just do this, just do that. And I'm like, there's something to say, if you back up to our 5-step process, what we finding the right audience, creating the right content, and then using your business as a brand, I've seen social media pages with tons of followers. We've picked up clients with thousands, if not tens of thousands of followers on their pages. And they've somehow put content out there to get people. And I use that term, I'm using the quotation, as you can't see me, but I'm doing it with my fingers, the 2 quotation marks, people to follow their social media pages. However, when they come to us and say, hey, we've been doing this for a long time, we really want some marketing professionals, they give us a shot, we start posting stuff on their pages and we go, realize that nobody on your page is engaging with your content. You may have 10,000 followers. It's all the wrong people because you've been getting the wrong people with the wrong message, with the wrong brand. They don't care.
Yeah.
If it's all about building up that audience that cares about you. And if you have those elements in there that communicate to your audience what your brand is all about, that's how they connect with you, right? I mean, that's really how they connect. Sure, they're going to see a beautiful picture of a steak, or they're going to see a band they want to go hang out with, or a beautiful floral arrangement, and they want to buy that and say, sure, I'm going to connect with you on that level. But they're also going to look at the professionalism, right? How it's written, because some of the branding elements are tangible and some are intangible, right? Like in some cases, if let's say, for example, like we did this for a long time ago, one of our earliest clients, we were like this carpet cleaning business. Now, if you're a carpet cleaning business, of your 3 elements, 3 things you want people to think about when they think about your business, sure, one of them is cleaning. I mean, obviously it's obvious, right? That's one that you want it to be. But the other 2 could be things a little more intangible. Well, professionalism might be one of the other 3 you want people to think about. And trustworthiness maybe is another one, or honesty, or something along those lines. Communicating that through your marketing means that every post that you put out there needs to look professional. It needs to be professional. You need to act in a professional way. And if you post something that's off color or off brand, that's not professional, right? Trustworthiness and honesty. Well, okay, if your brand, if you know what your brand is all about, and then you're posting things that have nothing to do with that, well, you're not being very honest about your business. You're just saying, well, here, you're going to pay attention to this, and we'll take your business. Well, that's not an above board business practice, right? So coming up with these 3 things and then trying to communicate them, whether they're tangible or intangible, is so important. But Jimmy, let me ask you, because you do this a lot, and I mean, is it hard to come up with these 3 things for businesses? Can it be challenging depending on what kind of business it is? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think most of the time it's not too hard. It's pretty easy. And I think it's about having a conversation with the client and getting their story and their passion that often leads a lot to what their brand is. Right. So if you can just get the client to talk about, why they started their business, why they're passionate about it, what are those things about their business that are distinct and make them different, it's easy to pull those 3 branding elements from and use those to make a consistent message to post about on your social.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think you really hit it when you said the word story. Hear their story, right? Because when we take on a client, so if you're doing marketing for your own business, and you're just trying to pick up some tips here, I would focus on those 3 elements of just spending some time to try to figure out what those 3 things you want people to think about when they think about you. But in the case of us as a digital marketing company, or if you're hiring a marketing company, you kind of have to get married when you do that. It takes time, right, to understand the brand and what's going on. So I always tell people, when you're doing this, be patient. Give yourself a little rope, and give the company that you're working with a little time to understand, because sometimes, and the other thing, and sometimes it can be more complicated, because one of the other things you said, Jillian, was you really hit it too, was talking to the business owner, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're working with companies our size, that's where we go, mid-level, smaller companies, and in some larger companies, but typically we work with the owner. If you're working with a more complicated business, you got to find that one point person who is the brand, who represents the brand. In our case, we deal with a lot of business owners who are the brand. I mean, they literally are, and they'll tell you that they're not. And they'll try to communicate to you that, well, I pay people to be creative and I don't need to be creative. And I'm like, you're easily the most creative person in this company, and I can see your brand exuding out of you. And sometimes they just need that outside influence to experience it, and then try to, put it down in terms that they can understand. Like, hey, we organized your thoughts in these 3 things. And look, if it needs to be more than 3 things, it can be more than 3 things. I mean, this is just a tool. It's not the rule, right? I'm not like setting marketing rules here, but I think 3 are good to have, because it's just easier to kind of get through your head in that regard. But I love what you said there about you really have to experience a brand, right? And I find too, and maybe you could comment on this too. I find that when to use this rule as a way to make your content better, I think it is really cool, because if you're struggling sometimes to post things on your digital marketing channels, and you're sitting in front of that blank screen and you're like, I don't know what to post today. I can't do this. And you go back to those 3 things and you say, which one of these have I not communicated recently? And you go, oh, it's this one. And then now you've got a basis to go create content based around that element. Do you ever use, do you guys ever, I'm sure you do that, right? You do that sometimes?
Yeah, I do it all the time, probably on a daily basis. I mean, selfishly, having a good brand keeps me organized, and lets me make sure when I'm going through my week that I'm hitting all of those elements at some point in the week. Yeah.
That's what makes you a great marketer too, by the way. But yeah, no, that's right on. But yeah, but the way I use it too, and I do the same thing, but man, I'll tell you, when I am at my, when we're trying to work on a project and we just cannot figure out what to do, sometimes I have to just smack myself a little bit and say, go back to the beginning and say, man, which of these have we not used recently? And then I can go, oh, we haven't used professionalism. Well, maybe we'll come up with some content regarding that, how to communicate that. And then it becomes fun, because, creativity is what everybody wants. When we talk to people about digital marketing, and this, that really means to people is, what kind of content can we make? That's what people think digital marketing is. They just want to talk about content. And while content is really important, and it's a huge part of this, it can be one of the most difficult kinds of things to do, because when you're overwhelmed by what kind of content to produce, think of all the different channels we work on, right? We work on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're doing Google My Business. We're doing Pinterest, right? In some cases. Okay, you can be overwhelmed by that. And then you have graphics, video, articles, pictures, all these different things. So I find, and I think what you said was really interesting, that you organize yourself so that you go back and it can be like that deep sigh, that deep breath for me anyway, when I go, oh, you know what? I need to post on these platforms this week because they're doing well. And I'm going to focus on this element. And now I'm going to have some fun and just get creative in my head about how can I show this element of this brand that I want to show. Because some of our clients are 100% involved in what we do, and some are 0% involved in what we do. And I'm sure that any people listening to this who are doing this themselves will find that they have harder days or easier days when sometimes the seasonality of a business, you have tons of content and it just comes at you, and sometimes you don't. And I really find that using this step of promoting your business brand with these 3 elements, or how many you want to come up with, really helps. Step 2, when you're trying to figure out what kind of content to produce, it really helps me, I think, when I'm having a tough day. But let's talk about this too. John, let me ask you. So when you're posting content, do you think, where do you think the most value comes from that post? Is it from the content itself, or is it from the value that they get from the branding element? Like, do you think it's that somebody sees like a beautiful piece of pizza or steak or flowers or whatever we're showing, and that becomes the thing that they latch onto, and that becomes the value of that post? Or do you think it's the perception of the post itself and the professionalism and the quality of it? Can you speak to that in terms of how you think that how that works for you and what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a perception of the brand that's more important and more engaging to your audience. I think good visuals are nice and they're helpful, and they also help communicate that message. But at the end of the day, I could sometimes post something that is maybe not so pretty, something like a client has sent me, but it just really engages their audience. It's really speak to their brand. For say, we do like a banquet hall client, and one of their branding elements is family. So just posting a simple picture of their family and being like, hey, come support us. We're your local family business. Those oftentimes have such a greater impact than working on a piece of content and making it looks the best it can be. Something as simple as that is definitely more engaging to an audience.
Yeah. That's really well said. And that goes back to one of the things that we really believe in over here, is that the idea of varied content, right? You're making sure that you're always showing different things, and you're using all different kinds of content so your pages don't get boring. But I love what you said, because you're totally right. We work with a lot of restaurants and retail kind of businesses, and some of the best content we post sometimes can be some of the stuff that we worked on the least. They might snap a cell phone picture and send it to us, and we might crop it a little bit or edit a little bit and then post it with a little message about, and that might be the thing that gets the most content. Now, that's because the branding element of what you're doing. If you're like a really high-end steakhouse, right? Or if you're a really high-end brand, that might not work for you. But if you're a local business, like you said, family-owned business, and one of their branding elements is family, then that couldn't be more right on the money. Now, I always caution people to be careful, because sometimes people want to go and they want to take something that works really well and just keep doing it and doing it over and over again. I always want to caution them and say, well, wait a minute. If you post the same kind of content, the same low quality picture of a family over and over and over and over and over again, it's not going to have the same impact. You need to feed in your other elements. That's why we have more than one. So you need to have those high quality pictures of your food, high quality pictures of your business, high quality pictures of your staff, as well as maybe articles about something going on in the community, and a video and a poll, questions and all these different things. But yeah, when you have something as maybe low quality, I'm doing that thing with my fingers again, low quality, the little quotation marks, as low quality as you may think it is, it may be the biggest branding impact that you make, and you get a ton of engagement out of it. And that's something you should really be proud of. Because like we said earlier in the conversation, if I take a meme that's like an off-color meme just because it's popular, it has nothing to do with me, get a ton of engagement. Or if I take this lower quality content that totally represents my brand and I get the same amount of engagement, those are two different marketing equations. One is winning for you and communicating what you should be doing and what you want people to think about. The other one is just making people chuckle and not doing anything for you, right? And so I think that was a prime example of how to communicate your brand with content that maybe, and it's interesting when basically what you did there, Jillian, is you took content, you put it through a brand filter, and you looked at it, you said, does this fit our brand filter? And when you have that brand filter, then you actually have a system by which to validate whether the content's going to work or not. You know what those three things are, and you put it through there. And it also helps, I think, to stop me from posting that meme or that, what did we say it was, GIF or GIF? GIF. Yeah. Okay. It stops me from posting that as well, because I might put that through my brand filter. I have things I've determined I want people to think about when they think about me, and say, you know what? This is cute, but this does not promote any of my branding elements. Therefore, I'm going to pass on it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. I love that's such a great example. And it's true. We do it all the time. Some of the best content you can get for your social media pages is real content, like something that happened right now, today. And no, it doesn't always have to be polished and beautiful, though, most of the time you want it to be, but filter in those other things. It really communicates. All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot just for like really quick. Okay. No, but just really quick. Is there something that you could just give a recommendation to people. Let's say there's people out there that are starting their own business or they're working on their own digital marketing and they're trying to, a tip or something, an advice or something that you could give to somebody. Cause you've been doing this for a long time. Every day you work, Jillian, nobody works harder than Jillian at our company, and she handles all of our stuff. Is there a piece of advice or something that you would communicate to somebody who maybe just came to you and said, Jillian, could you anything you could, any words of wisdom you could give me on anything having to do digital marketing? What would you say? Do you have anything you would throw up there?
Sure. I would say do what we did before, which is kind of think critically about your brand, what you want your identity to be, what your story is, what you're passionate about, and pull those 3 branding elements you want from your story, your personal story. And then think about it on a work week basis. What I kind of do is use those elements throughout the week and kind of make sure I hit each one during the week. And that also helps with making sure your content is varied.
Right.
So if we have, I'll go back to the banquet hall, their 3 kind of brand elements are homemade from scratch, Italian cuisine, elegance, and then also like family friendly atmosphere. So I want to make sure at some point in the week that I hit one of each of those elements. And I think if you kind of stick to that sort of formula, you will communicate your consistent brand message and you'll build an engaged audience.
Yeah, very well said. And that is so huge. If you're not doing that in your digital marketing and you're looking for a way to increase, step your game up and get a little better at it. If you do that and you're not doing that, I promise you that your stuff, your social media will improve. Your engagement will improve. Everything will improve just from using that one element that Jillian just said about branding. So that is so important. So again, if we roll all this back into kind of this 5 steps that we're going through this podcast, which we're talking about, stop posting, start marketing. That's what we keep saying. We're talking about. That's really what we mean here. Like we just had a 30-minute conversation, close to 30-minute conversation about branding elements on digital marketing. People that are just, and companies that are just posting things like that they're not talking about this. They're not hearing that. So I want you to hear that. So again, let's go through the 5 steps really quick so we understand where we are. So 1, we got to find the right audience. It's super important. If you don't know about that, go back and listen to the other episodes. 2, create the right content. We talked about that with John Meyer previously. Jump on, listen to what we talked about that. Jillian and I rocking out about promoting your business as a brand and how important that is. The next episode, we're going to talk about using ample resources and how it's so important to understand how much money to spend. We're going to talk about how you determine what CPM is. We're going to talk about how to budget for different things. So, because it's really important. A lot of people miss this. And then the 5th step in all of this is to analyze the results. Let's take all these steps and everything that we talked about and analyze it so that we can see whether or not it's actually working for us or not. And if we do all those steps, amongst other things, and we work really hard and we have maybe have a little bit of luck, because everybody needs a little bit of that. You can be successful at digital marketing, and you'll have a strategy. This is all strategic. Everything Jillian talked about today, everything I was trying to help her, put in my 2 cents, is all about strategy. It's about having a strategic position. And the interesting thing, and the cool thing is that's why I always tell you to have 3 things that you want to think about with this step, because if it doesn't work and it's not working for you, you can go back. Then you can go back and just adjust it. Oh, well, this element is not working. Okay, well, now you just, even though you failed a little bit at marketing, you still win. Because now all you have to do is go back and just adjust and say, well, let's make it this instead of these 3, let's make it these 3. And I think this will communicate better with our audience who we already determined, right? And then also the kind of content we're producing. So it's all meshed up in there together. So super helpful. Jillian, you're a rock star at this, man. I mean, she's a marketing genius, and she's like, I don't know. And now you're a great podcaster too. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was great insight. So thanks again, guys. So again, thanks for listening to the Stop Posting, Start Marketing podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast. The book is available for sale. You can check that out. Go to our website, visit relevantelephant.net. Tune in for the next time. We're going to be talking about how to determine what kind of resources to use for your digital marketing campaigns. And we will have more incredibly insightful and lovely guests, just like Jillian was today. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you guys next time. This is Joe saying, stop posting, start marketing.